Hello, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of Fable's Cove, a fantastical narrative podcast for DMs, players, authors, and fantasy enthusiasts alike to come together and hear the stories of several people in the fantastical realms of Faerun and any other that exist. Today, we're met with Tom, or Doop. He's been playing. He's been playing for about 5 years now, maybe 6-ish.
Yeah.
And he's been DMing for about 4. And we're gonna hear all about his stories and his experiences today. How you doing today, Tom? Good, chilling.
Yep, I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Oh, no problem, man. That's why I'm here. I guess I just want to start out with what kind of inspired you to get into playing, and in the first year of you kind of like delving into fantasy tabletop games, what inspired you to make that transition to become a DM?
I guess it's I guess the biggest influence, at least in me starting to actually run my own game and get everything going, is probably Critical Role. A friend of mine sent me a link, and I'm sure there's tons of other people out there that can attribute their start to Critical Role. But I mean, I've always thought that the game it looked really cool, and that I would love to do it with my friends. But I was always just really intimidated by like the thick rule books and everything. And I remember when I was really young, like maybe in like middle school or something, I decided to look into D&D, and I think probably at that point it was maybe somewhere around like third or fourth edition was the popular thing. And I started reading through it, and I was like, oh my God, this is a headache. Screw this. But then when Critical Role started and I heard that fifth edition was a thing, I had heard how it had like simplified so many things, and it was actually like more readable, digestible. And after playing around with it a little bit, I was like, okay, yeah, I can totally do this. I can totally sit down and actually read this book and understand the rules. And then from there, I just went wild with it, just like drawing up maps and coming up with stat blocks and all sorts of other neat little things to get going.
Yeah, yeah. It's it's weird to think about that Critical Role has been around for 6+ years.
Yeah.
It's and it's weird for me because that's I get shunned for this every other day of my life, but I can't get into Critical Role. I don't know why. I like Matt Mercer as a writer, as an author. He's added a lot to like the Unearthed Arcana, and
Mm-hmm.
like different stuff like that. But with the podcast of Critical Role, the show on YouTube, it I don't know what it is, but every time I sit down and listen to it, I don't know if it's because it's too long or it's
Mm-hmm.
because there's so much to catch up on at this point. But I can't get into it.
I totally sympathize with that. I mean, I'm the type of person where like if I want to watch something and I see that it has like 10 seasons or like 100 some episodes, it's like, no, screw that. I'm not getting into that. I don't have the time for that.
Yeah, yeah.
I consider myself lucky that I started out with it while it was still young. I think I only had to catch up on maybe like 20 or so episodes at the time. Um, but yeah, because I personally I love Liam O'Brien. Like he is my favorite voice actor. So when I heard that he was in it, I was like, oh hell yeah, I want to hear more of him. I want to see what he's doing.
Yeah, with fifth edition, I started out in 3.5 with a few of my friends in basically our basements when I think I was like 13,
Hmm.
and to make the transition from 3.5 and then to 4, we decided to start playing. That was kind of easy, but when we made the transition from 4 to 5, that was really hard, believe it
Really?
or not. Yeah,
Is
and
it
a lot
because you
of
had to unlearn a lot of things?
exactly, yeah,
Okay.
and that's what a lot of people are saying, and I sympathize with that because for people, but the reason why fifth edition came out was for ease of learning,
Hmm.
but it was hard for people that have been so used to that, like all these crazy subtexts and rules, like hourly abilities,
Yeah.
daily abilities, features, and it was almost like everyone was a wizard,
Mm-hmm.
because so many people have their own special, unique, like magical abilities, and it was really tough. But once I did make that transition in terms of like narrative and role playing and character customization, I think fifth edition is like superior to every other edition so far.
I Yeah, I would totally agree. I think I guess that like that kind of goes along with why I think fifth edition is so good, because I mentioned to you before that I was intimidated by previous editions on like trying to learn it, and I've always thought fifth edition is so great because it is so simple and like bare bones, and it lets you build off of that. And I think starting small and building off of something is a lot easier than starting big and cutting back on the things that you don't want or that you want to change.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. For
Hmm.
sure. I think a lot of people felt that when it was in the
Yeah.
transition. I almost wish I didn't play before fifth edition came out, so I would have gotten into it so much faster.
Yeah.
Uh, but you have been DMing it for like 4 years now, and
Mhm.
I'm kind of curious. Did you like start out DMing your own homebrew stuff right away, or did you start with like a storybook of something, like
Uh,
Lost Mines of Fandelver or something like that?
yeah, yeah. No, I actually, everything that I've ever ran has been entirely homebrew, for better or for worse. Um, but I figured that if I was going to sit down and take the like and commit to the mental effort of learning how to play this game and running it with my friends and sticking to it, it's like I wanted something that I had complete control over, and I didn't want to try to steer my players in a way that fit with what was already written down, so I wouldn't have to do the mental gymnastics to figure out how to fix loopholes or like plot holes and stuff like that. So yeah, I've been entirely homebrew. I mean, there's a couple of modules that I've always thought looked cool. I don't think I would ever run a module, but I would definitely enjoy playing in some. Like a couple of my friends and I have been, someone else has been running it, but we've been playing in Curse of Strahd for a little bit. And I think that is the first real module that I've ever actually played in, and I've been loving it. I think the spooky werewolf and vampire and kind of a grim dark aesthetic is really neat.
Yeah, Curse of Strahd is, just based off your answer there, is probably one of the best stories for you to play in as a
Hmm.
player, because it's tough to run a module or even like a whole book of a module where you don't railroad your players or like try and avoid
Yeah,
loopholes, because it's all written already,
yeah,
and that's tough. But what's good about Curse of Strahd, which I don't know how much you know about it, so I won't
yeah.
get
No
into it.
spoilers.
Yeah, I won't spoil it, but it's great because it gives the DM leeway, because it gives the players leeway. Where like there are several different ways to get to where you're going
Hmm.
in several different sections. So like if a group makes a decision about doing something, that's fine because you're there and you can always come back later and do it a different way, which is
Hmm.
really cool.
Yeah, my character actually just died in that game that we're currently doing.
Oh no.
Yeah.
It's a crazy book. I mean, just alone, I mean, you already started it, so this isn't a spoiler, but there's like 5 or 6 different ways that you can start that campaign out. The first chapter is just starting the campaign. It's crazy. So you can run it like 5 or 6 different ways.
Yeah, I mean, like I've never like read through modules just in case I ever play in them because I don't want to spoil it for myself. If I hear of something cool within a module, like sometimes I will like hone in on that and just take out that one little snippet and steal it for my own game. Like for instance, when I heard Curse of Strahd was coming out, I heard about the Death House and how it was supposed to be this um, like hardcore introduction, and I thought that was really cool. So I I looked over that. I didn't read all the details to make sure I didn't spoil it as much as I could. And I also heard about the whole like the card system, like the tarot deck kind of thing, and I thought that was really neat. So I
Mm.
didn't look at any of the meanings, but I like copy and paste all of the little descriptions that you got for each of the cards and sort of incorporated that into my own game and just essentially just reinterpreted the descriptions to fit my own world. So I thought that was really neat.
Yeah, like a homebrew deck of many things.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm looking forward to this new campaign that I think it actually might have came out. The Frostwind Dale is a new book, and it looks really interesting.
Yeah. A friend of mine just got that, and he's been reading through it, and everything I've heard from him sounds really neat. Um,
Yeah, I watched an interview with Chris Perkins, who's one of the lead narrative designers at Wizards of the Coast, and he was talking
mhm.
all about how it's 10 different main areas, each with their own like culture and stuff, and you have to just explore it. And I didn't hear anything about the story because I almost don't want to. I want to be a player in that game,
Yeah.
but you never know. Death House is cool. Death House is was Death House inspired Curse of Strahd because Death House came out as a module in first edition in the 80s.
Really?
Yeah, and everyone loved it so much because Strahd was a character, and it wasn't called Death House. I think it was just called Von Strahd, and it was all about fighting a vampire, and he was the first vampire in D&D, and then they wound up remastering it for 5th edition into a whole book.
Wow.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was called Barovia. That's what it was called.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's really cool to think about. Same with Dungeon of the Mad Mage. That was a second edition book, and it came out again for fifth edition, which is really cool. But enough of that. I'm just a nerd for publications. I want to talk about your homebrew campaign. So, what inspired it? When in terms of the story, what is the story? How many players are in it, and kind of how many players are still in it? That's
That's a better question.
yeah.
I mean, it's to be honest, it's been a bit hectic. Um, I think just by the nature of it going on for so long, I would probably split like it's been a like solid ongoing game, but I'd probably split it into like two or three distinct chunks. And people have come in and out of the game over the years, but there are um, essentially three players who have stuck with me the entire time, or I guess two, because one of them, it it breaks my heart. One of my players, um, like the original three, has recently had to step out of the game because, like, for the past few months because they just had their first baby, and so he hasn't been able to spare the time for it. Um, which sucks because we're coming up on the end, and I really want to when like the final fight comes, I really want to sit down with everyone and try to organize a time where everyone can get together to do that because I really don't want him missing out on that. Um, but so there's the original three, and then people have dipped in and out. I think we started it up with a party of five or six, not including me. And then after the first few sessions, we had a really rough start, and it's been sort of a meme ever since. I'm sure we'll get into that later. And then after that, things started to progress a little bit more smoothly. And then after a couple of years, everyone wanted to mix things up a little bit. So we decided to just do like a small time skip, roll up some new characters at the same level, and then go with that for a little bit for a couple more years. And then we recently just did that again. So as I was saying, like there's probably like two or three chunks of like two or three distinct parties, and I've been doing my best to try to keep everything as cohesive as I can. And I've let everyone know that like the plot points for their characters and everything that they've put on hold are still going on, and we can maybe revisit them later, or if they want to fully retire those characters, then essentially all the things that they would come into to stop the bad guys from doing are going to happen, and it's going to affect the world going forward. And there has been some of those changes going on now. I don't know if any of them have noticed it. It doesn't seem like it, but all those things are definitely still going on because I don't want to put everything on hold just because the people want to switch characters. Got to put a lot of time and effort into those like story beats.
Yeah.
But right now our party consists of it's me and then I think like 4 players right now. So we have a warlock, a cleric, a rogue, and a paladin.
Warlock, a rogue, a cleric, and a paladin.
Yeah, which is pretty great for me because the last party was pretty much entirely assassin rogues.
That's horrible.
Yeah, it was like 3 assassin rogues and 1 gunslinger. And it was really interesting because like I've told my players this before is I don't know if this is commonplace, but personally I like to design encounters in like I like to design encounters agnostic of whatever the party is. So, like, if I design an encounter that I think is cool or fits the narrative, and it just so happens to be a really hard fight for, let's say, a party of all wizards, or really easy for a party of all rogues, and that's just how it turns out. And it comes down to the players to take advantage of what their party is good at. And I think that's been working out really well. So like when the party was all rogues, a lot of times their encounters would focus on like scouting out the place in advance, figuring out who the targets are, where to avoid the guards, things like that, and then going in and just getting that one solid first round off on the final boss and just boom, 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 dead, 1 hit. And it's a little frustrating for me as the DM to see my big bad boss get 1 shot, but when I see all the other players just like really excited and happy that like their plan worked out flawlessly, I think it's all worth it because that's what it's all about.
Yeah, that's a fantastic way to DM. I think that I almost think it's metagaming for you if you don't do that, because you know how players metagame where they know the stats of different things, and
Yeah,
it's almost metagaming for the DM to build encounters based around their party, because if you think about it in a real world, like if I go and fight someone in public, I don't know what they're good at.
exactly.
And I feel like it should be the same way in D&D, where like sometimes it's tough and sometimes it's really easy, and that's just kind of how it is. But I relate to you because I had a big bad of a campaign that went for the higher end of 4 years, and they almost did like essentially one shot hit the big bad in within a good 2 rounds of combat.
Mm-hmm.
And if it wasn't for the smaller minions that was there as well,
Yeah.
then his all of his little mine minions, then he probably would have died in the first round of combat.
Yeah.
So I feel you there.
Mm-hmm.
And with the baby, no excuses, no excuses.
The baby?
Yeah, just because he had a baby doesn't mean he can't play D&D. You gotta tell him
Yeah.
buckle down, come back.
Yeah. It's either me or that kid. Choose.
roll a kid a character.
Yeah. Once she's old enough, I'm sure we'll try to get it.
What's the? I don't want to talk about the end because this is a strange anomaly of an interview, because you're kind of still doing this campaign. So I don't want to talk about the end of it, but maybe like tell me a bit about the roots, like what it's about and how what inspired you to write this homebrew story.
Okay. I mean, I guess that's why, like I was saying, I'd have a little bit of trouble sort of like breaking it down because I like to, the way I like to run my games is very is essentially write out like as bare bones as I can to get it functional. Like certain people, certain shops, certain quests, certain events going on in every little place here and there. And then have, excuse me, the players fill in the rest. So whenever there is essentially like a section of downtime, I will try to incorporate at least three possible directions the players can go in. Like, is that like three different quest lines essentially, and then they pick from there. And then I essentially just improv everything else and write it down as I go. And I think that's worked out the best because I learned very early on that the more time and effort and planning I put into specific story beats and quest lines and characters, the quicker I will be disappointed when the players don't do those things. So, I mean, there's essentially the overall story, like with the different parties and everything, is it seems like a cycle of the players starting out with little to nothing, making a name for themselves, and then once they reach a certain point where they're happy with how their characters have turned out, regardless of level, everyone sort of just agrees that's like, hey guys, I think we've done a lot. I think we've done a really good job. I don't want to see us die. So let's retire our characters and start up someone new. So with the what I consider like the original party, they started out like at level like 3 or 4 or whatever. Um, went around to different towns and places, like helping people out, like killing bad guys, re-killing bad guys, and doing all this crazy stuff. And then eventually they made enough of a name of themselves for like when this big event happened, which was essentially like a demon invasion to this like holy town or holy city that they had essentially called home for a while. They made enough of a name for themselves, or at least after that happened, made a name for themselves to the point where the city recognized them as okay, like because this was the part that was like all rogues and stuff. It's like, okay, you guys can be like this like special ops task force for us, and like while we're dealing with the big bad army at the gates, you guys sort of slip around here and take out their commander. And then once that happened, we had a whole adventure like through the abyss because the leader was a demon. And I think everyone knows at this point, like if you kill a demon on the material plane, they essentially respawn back in the abyss. So they had to kill him once and then go into the abyss, find him and kill him again before he came back. and and that was really interesting. And then after that, it's pretty much just been the same thing of like starting out with little to nothing, growing up into this big bad righteous character, and then essentially retiring. And it kind of sucks for me because I would really love to see like a single group of people go from start to finish. But all of the little individual stories that we've made have been really satisfying, and I can't blame them because playing the same character for 2 or more years can get a little stale, and that's something I want to try to address in the next campaign.
Yeah, no, I feel you there. The same exact thing happened to me with a few players in my hello
Yep.
in my in my 4-year campaign too. They kind of just got bored and wanted to switch it up, so they did. And also, a lot of them are new, so once they got comfortable in the game, they were like, you know what, I want to try out a new class. You know, it's been a while,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you know, with the I do want to go back to something you said though about how you like to kind of give them 3 paths or
Hmm.
3 quest lines, I think you said, and then they can kind of do what they want in them. Did you make it in a way where like those three quest lines ended up at the same point at the end so that they could like so that they got to the same point but they could do it in three different ways, or is it just completely I'm gonna write it as we go. I don't know where they're gonna end up, but we'll
Yeah.
see.
I mean, I would say it's like completely open ended. Like the the three or more different quest lines will lead to completely different outcomes.
That's interesting.
And I have like sort of like the cliff notes of each one written down. It's like, okay, if they do this, then this thing is going to happen around here, and this guy is trying to do this thing, and this is what the final fight will probably look like. And then I fill in the blanks as I go, sort of like ad-libbing it, because sort of like going back to the whole module thing, if I write myself into a corner, then if something happens that I don't expect, or the players do something like wonky, then it throws everything else out of whack, and I'm scrambling to try and figure out like how the hell am I going to make this work?
Yeah, that's when you call a
Um,
session. That's when you call a session an hour early, and you're like, "Wow, you finished that a lot faster than I thought you would," even though
yeah.
they didn't, and you just need to rewrite it.
Yeah, it's like, okay, guys, let's take a 10-minute break. I'm just
Go
just,
ahead, grab some pizza, take a
yeah,
drink.
just furiously typing or scribbling in my notebook.
Someone grab me a beer or something.
Yeah, yeah. Um,
Oh man,
but I,
that's
I guess like I when I first started out, I guess I should say this. I left it entirely open ended.
that's
But
scary.
then but then I found out something that I really wasn't expecting and still kind of catching me up by surprise is that some of my players want the like totally open-ended, open world kind of stuff, but some of my players want to be railroaded, which I never would have expected. So that's why
Never.
yeah, which I thought was so weird. So that's why I kind of I guess like mix the two and essentially like I'll present them like three or four or whatever different paths, and they can always choose to do something entirely different. But I found giving the players that want to be railroaded those options helps them not be like paralyzed by indecision, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. After playing with the same group of people for a while is almost a blessing because you get used to each other's play style.
Mhm.
And I think that maybe in the beginning of things, if you were to give a group of players three options to go to, they might just turn around and not do any of them.
Yeah.
But once you're playing with them for 2 years and you give them three options, I think that they sympathize with you and they realize that, like, yeah, we don't have to do these things, but he wrote them, so we're gonna do one.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think that's good that you do give them options because I think that that's is it railroading? Yeah, but is it not really? Yeah, because it's not one option. Get on the train and get off at exit
Yeah, it's
A.
like here's your opportunity to be railroaded should you choose. I like to
Yeah.
think of it that way. It's like if you want to do that, it's there. If you don't, think of whatever wacky stuff you can think of and we'll go with that.
Yeah, I tried to. I did something pretty similar to you in one of my games, and
Mhm.
they could choose between three different jobs every Wednesday, basically.
Mhm.
And if they didn't want to, then they could do whatever they want. And in the beginning, some people did that, and we started out in this town, and then I made the town have like NPCs and people. So sometimes people did decide to stay and actually talk to NPCs and go shopping, and that was their whole entire session, and that was wild to me.
Yeah.
But like you get home from work to play D&D, and then you just walk around a town all
Yeah.
day.
And it's just a shopping episode and
Yeah. uh, I kind of want to talk about some like because we all got them. I want to talk about some memories. Maybe some really epic fights or some funny missions or lack thereof. Maybe a really sad mission, just something that sticks in your head from your
yeah,
campaign.
yeah. There's definitely a couple. Um, I would say probably one of the, I wouldn't say the saddest. I don't know how many truly sad moments we've had. Um, but there's two different stories in particular that kind of stick out to me for more, I guess, dramatic things. And one of them was early on, probably I'd say around level 5, 6, somewhere around there. And the party was in the hometown of one of the party members, or actually a place nearby. And they discovered that people had been going missing, in particular children. And they were spending nights staying up late, like monitoring the town, and they kept getting these conflicting reports where like they wouldn't like the townsfolk wouldn't see anything sketchy. They would just turn around and their kids would be gone, or they would just disappear, like babies would disappear out of their mother's arms. And they're like, how could this be happening? Like, this doesn't make any sense. So eventually they became maybe a little frustrated, and they weren't getting as much information as they wanted. So they decided, or some of the party, without the consent of the rest of the party, decided that they were going to adopt their own child and use them as bait. And I told them, and I was like, guys, this is because everyone, like, I don't disallow evil characters. I just say, like, if you pick an alignment that goes against the party, eventually it's like if it's an evil campaign, you're playing a good guy, or if it's a good campaign, you're playing an evil guy. Eventually, it's going to reach a point where either you have to, like, dick over the party or do something evil, and at that point, like they agree to this. I don't do it out of the blue, but I'll say, like, okay, this is your, like, evil reveal moment, and I'm gonna take your character. You're gonna roll up a new one at the same level, and you get replacement items and stuff, and then I'm going to turn that into a big bad evil guy. So, but anyway, so they decided they were going to do this. And I spent the next few sessions like role playing this young kid, maybe I think it was like 5 or 6, like a small child, like a toddler or something like that. And they ended up getting really attached to it. So when the day, or attached to her, it was a little girl that turned into something else, and like later down the line. So when the day finally came for like this big like moment when they were gonna have like this heist, the stakeout, they started having second thoughts, and this conflict broke out in the party, and someone were like, "This is a horrible idea. You shouldn't be doing this. How can you do this to this little girl and all this stuff?" And like, but we don't have any other options. And like all this, like this arguing back and forth in character, not like the players getting mad at each other, but and it ended up that they were able to figure out a sort of a clever solution around it, which was I like to, or I guess I can go into that a little bit later, but they figured out a little clever solution around it to bait out this creature, and it was an oni, and they were using their like charming and invisibility effects to essentially like charm the townsfolk to make them turn a blind eye while they snuck in invisibly to snatch the kids. And then the charm would break, and they'd be like, "What? Huh? What happened? Oh God, where's my baby?" Like that kind of thing. Which I thought was really funny. But
That's awesome.
I've always run and I've let everyone know this up front, that like I've always run sort of like an R-rated game where like messed up stuff can happen, and as the good guys, it's your job to step in and make sure that doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that was that was definitely one of the big dramatic ones. Um,
It's funny too. It's a funny setup that could have been handled in, I feel like, many ways, but it's crazy how you can make whether you make it, you take it from D&D Beyond, you run a module. It's crazy how many ways you think a way something can go in your head. and then your players will say something that they plan on doing that you could have never imagined them doing. Because I
Yeah.
can only imagine you didn't plan, well, just in case someone adopts a child and tries to use it as bait.
No, it totally came out of left field, and I had no idea. And I was just like, I mean, I guess you could do that.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
You had said in character they were fighting,
Hmm.
not out of character.
Yeah.
I'm curious because this has happened to me a few times. Have you ever had a in-game choice that made your players actually start arguing
Like,
like outside of character?
um,
I know that's a
I
kind of nitpicky question. I'm just kind of curious.
yeah, yeah. Uh I don't think I mean like there's definitely been some disagreements on like what plan they should go with. I don't think I've ever had like a full-blown argument or people getting like mad over it. Um and usually like if discussion like if I can, if it makes sense, if discussions start going on too long and I can see they're kind of like talking in circles and not really deciding, I'll maybe like throw in another encounter or it's like you've waited too long and like the big bad guy is now doing this or like an NPC will come in to say something to sort of break it up. But I don't think there's ever been an instance where the players have really fought with each other. We've like at least the core three, we've all been friends since like middle and high school. One of the players like has been my best friend ever since I moved here. Like I've known him for the majority of my adult life. I think probably like something like 15, 16 years we've known each other and been best friends. But yeah, so I'm lucky that that hasn't happened.
Yeah, it's only ever happened to me once, and
Mhm.
it was nuts. I didn't see it coming. It was one of the dumbest missions for it to happen, and that's why I was just curious because you never know.
Yeah.
Again, I don't want to talk about the ending
Hmm.
because just because of the nature, it's not done yet.
Hmm.
But is this like a big bad potential? Like, is it something leading to a big bad? Is it something maybe you're planning on bringing the old characters like back in? Because I know you said earlier that you're still letting the You almost gave the old players an NPC role,
Yeah.
and I'm kind of curious if you plan on bringing them back in at
Yeah,
the
yeah.
end.
That's actually an excellent question because that's already sort of happened. Essentially, what's going on right now is it is a not a it is a technical like a world-ending threat. The premise is that this god Gaia, which is essentially just a super beefed up and reflavored Tarask, has been woken up prematurely by the sect of druids to reset the world. Because right now the party's sort of home city is the most technologically advanced place in the world. It's sort of like this steampunky magic. They like if you wanted to play a gunslinger, you would have to be from there. Like they're the first people to pioneer firearms, and so like the druids and whatnot, and like this huge Tarask, which is like the size of a mountain range. It's like on the world map, it takes up like 6 hexes, like that kind of thing. And it's stomping its way towards the city, and they have essentially have been trying to figure out ways on either how to stop it, how to reason with it, how to take it out or put it back to sleep. And they've been going on like little side quests to get bits and pieces and different options and things like that. Um, but while they're doing that, a lot of the party has been split recently, which has been rough for me. And my players have been sympathizing with it, but I don't blame them. So I didn't want to hit them with a no, don't split the party kind of thing. But it's been interesting. Like while the party has been split, essentially right now in our last game, everyone except for one of the players has met back up. They're still split off, And he is essentially sneaking around doing his roguey stuff on top of this giant Tarrasque, trying to figure out what's going on and gather information and maybe assassinate a few people here and there. And while he's gone, his old character was the original gunslinger. And eventually he retired that character back to this city, and the city has been under siege. So I said, hey, since your main character is off doing this thing, do you want to play your old character, your old gunslinger, bring them back into the fight to help out the party while you're off handling your little side quest thing? And he was totally down for it. And it was so cool for like all the other players to see this reintroduction of someone their current characters don't know, but someone that they knew for like years, a few years back, like coming back into the fray and using all the cool abilities that they used to and everything. And so I mean, like if it ever comes up and there's like an opportunity for someone to bring back one of their old characters, they totally can. And then we'll just sort of like bring them up to speed to wherever the party is currently at. Like right now, the party is like all the main characters are around level 18, I think.
18. Oh my god.
Yeah, it's a little awkward because of some of the side quest stuff. I think one of the players is like 1,000 XP away from hitting 18. One of them is a little bit further ahead and they're already 19. So we're around 18 right now, and when my player retired the gunslinger character, I think they were level 9 or 10, something like that. So it's just like, hey, so in your time away, you would have gained a couple of levels. Let's say you're up at level 12 right now, just so you're not useless in these higher level fights, but you're not the main focus. And then here's a couple of little extra things, like little extra magic items or whatever. Like I actually
they found along the way.
Yeah, which is funny because I actually like his original gunslinger character is the one who traveled through the abyss, and he was able to find this special resource that he brought back to the city. And during the downtime or whatever that his character has spent there, they've sort of refined that and figured out ways of like mining it, cultivating it. So now it is a common resource that his character that he's bringing back now has access to. So he can use this thing that he found for the city that like he did on his own that like pushed them along further like technologically, which I think is really neat.
Yeah, no, that is really cool. It's like it's almost like a chief of police just like stepping in.
Yeah,
getting
yeah.
the job done.
Yeah, he his character originally started out as essentially like a test monkey, like for the R&D department, who is just, it's like, okay guys, we figured out these firearm things, but I mean they work great in labs, but we need to get some real world uses for them. So his character was essentially like, okay, yeah, sure, hand them over to me and I'll head out there and see what I can do. And then he comes back and tells like the city everything that he's found and all the experience he's had, and like has all these advancements, and now he is essentially like the head of the R&D department essentially for the city. So it's
That's cool. I love seeing stuff like that, and it seems like a really interesting story hook. It almost makes me think of like the colossal Titan approaching the walls in Attack on Titan, and they're trying to figure out what they can do to stop it from kicking a hole in the wall.
Yeah, that's pretty much where we're going right now. So
That's cool. That's really cool. 18. I mean, we're kind of wrapping things up here, but at 18, you're getting close to the death number.
Yeah.
You kind of answered one of my questions, because I was going to ask you if you do XP or milestoning, but I don't think I could handle the stress of tracking XP to level 18. So kudos to you.
Yeah, I think it's something that I'm gonna readdress in the next campaign. I've talked to him about it, and I've already sort of started to implement that sort of system where if someone, like, we're gonna do pseudo milestone where everyone will still be gaining XP and whatnot as normal, but if they do accomplish some big important like quest or character moment, then they'll reach that milestone. They'll just finish up whatever they got left. Um, and the way I'm planning on handling like sort of side quests and whatnot is because that's how a lot of people got ahead or behind, is that they handled side quests and finished this big bad boss all by themselves somehow, essentially. So they got like they shot way further ahead. And the way I've been doing it now, where it kind of sucks, but I think the players understand that it's sort of a like a nice, like a decent middle ground, is I run the game with stacking or not stacking inspiration, so you can get more than one inspiration.
Ooh, interesting.
So for side quests, instead of handing out XP, I give them inspiration for completing those things instead of it. So they don't get further ahead, but they do still get some sort of reward in addition to whatever loot drops or whatever they would normally get.
And do you make inspiration go away at the end of the session, or do you let it carry over to the next time they play?
Nope, they keep it for as long as they want, and it's worked out. Like I haven't had to put a cap on it. I think the most anyone has ever had at one time is 3, because I also let them at any point trade them between someone. Like they don't have to be there. So like let's say we're all in a session together and the party is split, like 2 people on one side of the city, 2 people on the other side. And like let's say one of the people has to make a really important roll and they roll bad and they don't have any inspiration. Someone else who's on the opposite end of the world, like as long as they're in the same party and everything, can say like, hey, I think this is really important too, take my inspiration, and they get a reroll. And then I also do stacking advantage and disadvantage. So if they want to spend 3 or 4 inspiration on a single roll to make sure it sticks, they can do that.
Yeah, it's cool. It's like an expendable. It is a indefinitely expendable D20. I like
Yeah.
that. It's the concept of someone helping across the map is funny. It's almost like Goku raising his hand.
Yeah.
He's like,
Yeah,
let
it's
me
like,
lend me
"Give
your
you my
energy.
Yeah.
And then you see a D20 flying down from the sky.
Yeah.
Oh man. Well, I mean, I could keep going and going, but I kind of want to wrap it up here.
Yeah, I got you. I mean, if you
That's
wanna
cool.
if you wanna do another one, I'm totally down. I got plenty more stories to get.
Yeah, no, I guess what I do want to ask you is if you, I should have asked you this ahead of time, but do you have any shout outs or like plugs or anything you want to put at the end of the episode here, or maybe the socials?
Yeah, no, I don't really use social media or anything
God
like
bless.
that.
You're
Yeah.
lucky.
Yeah, I try to stay far away from that stuff. But no, I mean, I don't really have anything to shout out or anything. I guess I'd like to shout out to all of my fantastic players who've stuck with me for this long. And I'll say now, if any of you are watching this, when the campaign ends, I expect someone to get me like a little #1 DM mug or like a world's best DM coffee mug, something like that.
World's okayest DM.
I'd take that too. I want some sort of recognition. Anything.
Oh man. All right. Well, Tom, thank you for coming on, man.
It's
And
been a pleasure.
it's been a wild ride. And everyone else, thank you for tuning into episode 3 of Fable's Cove. See you guys next month on episode 4. All right. Peace out.